Hello, Walter. If you were to ask anyone today, had they ever heard of Henry George Ferguson, they would probably ask you to repeat the question. However, if you were to change the Henry George to Harry Ferguson, most people would certainly, those in their middle years or older, would immediately answer yes. Harry Ferguson was without doubt one of the most remarkable men to have been born and raised in the north of Ireland. Inventor, designer, pioneer of aviation and motor car racing, above all known for his involvement in the development of the plough and tractor as an aid in increasing farm efficiency and, as a result, food production. At the peak of his career, he was known the world over, and the results of his work are still very manifest today. Harry was born on the 4th of November 1884 at Growell, Dromore, County Down, the fourth child of James and Mary Ferguson. There were 11 in the family, 8 boys and 3 girls. His father, who farmed 100 acres at Lake House, was a strict religious disciplinarian and brought his family up as members of the Plymouth Brethren. He was a stern man and expected his family to do his instant bidding. Quite recently I visited Lake House on the road between Hillsborough and Dromara. It has been charmingly maintained by the Poots family, who have lived there for 47 years. Although with 100 acres the Ferguson family were quite financially secure, farm life was very hard, a grind, and the young Harry, it is said, did not take to it very well. His elder brother, Joe, had left farming and had set up as a motor engineer in Belfast. Harry joined Joe as an apprentice in 1902, after a rudimentary education. The brothers became partners in the firm, which was called J.B. Ferguson and Company Automobile Engineers. The premises were in Little Donegal Street in Belfast. In these early years of the 20th century, the brothers did well. Harry became quite an expert as a car engine tuner, and they had a reputation for accuracy and quality of work. They introduced the most up-to-date equipment, which included the first electric drills and an electrically lit inspection pit in Belfast. Harry took part in motorcycle and then motor car sporting events to publicise the firm. For instance, he took part in a hill climb event in October 1908 in Bangor, in Central Avenue in the town, where he drove a 1416 Argyll. He became known as the Mad Mechanic because of his daredevil exploits. He was always looking for fresh challenges, and for these he now turned to aviation, then in its infancy. On the 17th of December 1903, the Wright brothers had made their maiden flight. For a number of years afterwards, they developed their aircraft secretly. It was not until June 1908 that they revealed their advanced method of control in Europe. Harry was greatly influenced and felt it would be in the interests of his firm to get in on this new craze, so he built and flew an aeroplane. By December 1909, testing it in the Hillsborough domain. After a number of attempts, he managed 160 yards of flight by that year's end. From an early age, Harry was always a man of great persistence. Once he applied his mind to something, he carried his ideas through to ultimate success in his eyes. He had the major problems of not only having to design an aircraft working from indistinct pictures in magazines, there being no reference books, but of having to learn to fly it as well. He redesigned the wings of his plane, and after further trials at Masserine Park, Lough Neagh, he moved to Newcastle, County Down, where on the 26th of July 1910 he attempted to win £100 by becoming the first person in Ireland to fly an aircraft for 3 miles. The closeness of the Mourne Mountains created air turbulence, which made the flight almost impossible, and Harry crashed twice in trying to take off, breaking a wing each time. Not to be beaten, and with the local council extending the time limit of their offer, Harry finally flew from Dundrum to Newcastle, the required distance, and landed in front of the Sleeve-Donard Hotel. He continued to fly, especially around McGilligan, County Derry, but despite gaining much experience, suffered a severe crash in October 1910, which wrecked his plane. Undeterred, he had a new aircraft flying by June 1911 at Newton Ards. A rift opened between himself and his brother, Joe, ostensibly over the amount of time Harry was devoting to flying. But in reality it was a clash of personalities which caused relations between them to strain. Joe was a strongly religious man, a mission hall preacher, whilst Harry was an agnostic. Harry had made valuable social and business connections whilst with Joe in employment. One of these was T. MacGregor Greer from Tullylagan, Cookstown, who backed him when Harry opened on his own in Belfast in 1911, calling his firm May Street Motors firstly, and then after 12 months Harry Ferguson Limited. The first vehicle he sold was a Star car to a family called Cunningham. From his earliest times here, two of his employees were William Sands and Archie Greer, who both contributed significantly to his work in later years. Harry had abandoned flying shortly after his marriage to Maureen Watson, a Dromore girl, in 1913. Some say she persuaded him to give it up. At any rate, returning to motors, he achieved the fastest time in the first hill climb at Craigantlet in 1913. His firm had agencies for Vauxhall and Maxwell cars and started to sell overtime tractors imported from the United States in 1914. The origins of the tractor go back to at least 1894. The early ones owed much design-wise and in appearance to the steam engines, and even by the outbreak of the First World War, whilst progress had been made by making better machines using paraffin engines, they were still heavy, clumsy and expensive. By September 1917, there were only 300 or so tractors in the whole of Ireland. In these years, due to the war, importing food was hazardous. There was therefore a great need to increase domestic food production. The government arranged to import 6,000 tractors from America and to instruct farmers on their use. Ferguson was appointed as he was regarded as a ploughing expert in 1917 by the Irish Board of Agriculture to travel the length and breadth of the country to demonstrate and instruct how increased efficiency in tractor ploughing was to be achieved. On these trips around the country, Ferguson was accompanied by Willie Sands, and during it they began to formulate new ideas on plough design. Ferguson observed that in addition to many of the drawbacks previously mentioned, the tractor plough arrangements of the day were extremely dangerous. Due to weight and design, many accidents occurred. Indeed, ploughing with horses was safer. With this in mind, Harry designed an implement which linked directly to the tractor, and not by a chain as previously. Other improvements were made too. In these ways, tractor and plough became one unit. One prominent feature of the new plough was its lightness. It was to prove to be more efficient and reliable as time went on. He took his ideas to Henry Ford in Dearborn, USA in 1922 and attempted to strike a deal whereby the latter's Fordson tractor would be linked to Ferguson's plough. But the duo could not agree anything at this stage, and so Ferguson returned to Britain and eventually produced his own lighter-weight tractor linked to an improved version of his plough, which became a winner. It was manufactured by David Brown of Huddersfield. In the late 1930s, Ford and Ferguson did strike a deal, but more about this later. This was the famous handshake agreement whereby Ford agreed to manufacture Ferguson's designs and patents. At this stage, I feel it is pertinent to discuss some aspects of Ferguson's personality, which, it has to be admitted, always made him admired and respected for his genius, but not universally loved by those who worked for him or had business with him. Colin Fraser has written a very good biography. The paperback edition by Old Pond Press was published in 1998. In it, he gives evidence of Ferguson being strong-willed even at an early age. Apparently at the age of 4, he was in the farmyard one day playing, when a farmhand with a wheelbarrow wanted to get past him. "You're in the way, young man," said the farmhand. "No," replied the child, "you're in Harry's way." We see this strong-willedness too in his efforts as an early aviator. Harry was a very exacting man to work for. He insisted on his employees being spick and span. No slovenliness was permitted regarding dress. Overalls and boiler suits had to be kept immaculate. Office and managerial staff's apparel was likewise. He didn't allow his employees to wear double-breasted suits. He thought they creased too much when sitting in them. Whilst if one had a notebook, it always had to be carried in the pocket Harry approved of. He felt his organisation in its various capacities had a certain respectable image, and he was determined to maintain it. If one was late for an appointment with him, he would often cut the time allocated for the appointment by the exact number of minutes that were lost by the lateness. The story is told too of one day when out for a drive. This would have been in his later life. He saw a Ferguson tractor in a field which he thought had been badly maintained. He stopped his car, got out, and upbraided the driver of the tractor concerned. Employees often suffered a severe telling off if he felt they deserved it. He was a driven man, a great perfectionist, who was fully absorbed in any problem of design or otherwise that arose until it was solved. Of course, this strong sense of purpose and determination to succeed had its downside. He was mercurial, either elated or down in the dumps, and this led to fits of depression. His wife Maureen, it is said, was his anchor in life, and though he was something of a stormy petrel, gently guided him and kept him calm. Yet for all this, there are many stories of his showing personal kindness, though he was never one to contribute hugely to known charities. To go back a little, Walter, all through the years when he was developing his Ferguson tractor system, he kept up his interest in motor cars. His garage at the side of the City Hall at Donegal Square East was truly a landmark. There is a blue plaque on the site today commemorating him. These premises stretched back to Arthur Street. Other premises were on the site of the former Chapel Fields in Alfred Street, which ran through to Adelaide Street. A tractor site was in Alfred Street further down, and opposite it, if memory serves me right, was a used car and tyre department. So all around this area he had business interests associated with the motor and farm trades. These business interests in Belfast were always of great financial help to him. In later years, two of his former employees, Joe Thompson and Hugh Reid, took over these businesses and traded as Thompson Reid Limited, as many of your listeners will recall. Harry had been very influential in the passing of the Road Races Northern Ireland Act of 1922. The Ulster Motorcycle Club ran the Ulster Grand Prix in October of that year on public roads. Harry, with the cooperation of Wallace MacLeod of the Belfast Newsletter, persuaded the RAC to organise the tourist trophy races on the Ard Circuit between 1928 and 1936. These were for ordinary touring cars, and they were a huge attraction, with up to 500,000 people spectating. Many of the top drivers of the time took part. Names like Freddie Dixon, Captain Malcolm Campbell, Nuvolari and Kay Dawn spring to mind. Harry enjoyed mixing with these people and all the hubbub associated with the races. His garage was used as a base for the event, and on race days he could be seen at the starting line. Often he was denied entry as he did not carry an official pass, and this annoyed him. He expected to be waved on to any part of the course. On some occasions he was guilty of unwittingly delaying the start by chatting to the drivers over long. Harry went to the United States in late 1939 as part of the deal he made with Henry Ford, whereby his company would design the new Ford Ferguson tractor, as it was called. Ford would manufacture it and Harry's company would sell it. He was to stay there for the duration of the war. During hostilities, he tried unsuccessfully to have Ford Great Britain manufacture the tractor in Dagenham for the British home market. This frustrated him very much, as he maintained it was part of the original handshake agreement. However, after some hiccups, his US company prospered at this time. At the end of the war, he returned to Britain and concluded a deal with the Standard Motor Company in Coventry, whereby his tractor could be manufactured by them in Great Britain. But by this time, relations with Fords had begun to turn sour. Henry Ford, who had always admired him, died in 1947, and his grandson Henry Ford II took over the firm. He disliked the arrangement whereby the company manufactured tractors for Ferguson's company, but were unable to sell them themselves. He could not get a written contract with Ferguson and eventually set up his own distribution agency. He also brought out his own tractor, which was very similar to the Ford Ferguson, but he did not obtain patent rights from Ferguson, and as a result a lawsuit which dragged on for 4 years between him and Ferguson became one of the most famous in history. Willie Sands, whom I mentioned earlier, caused complications and much distress to Harry by insisting that he and not Harry was the true inventor of the system. Eventually, in 1952, Harry was awarded over £3 million compensation for patent infringement and loss of business. During the 4 years' legal tussle, many of Harry's close associates worried as to the effect the case might have on his mental state. Harry reassured them with the following remarks: "Some people play golf, others fish. I have my case." His loss of business had been serious, however, due to the Ford break, and he had to acquire a site in the United States to produce his own tractor. Later he linked up with Massey Harris in Toronto, and Massey Ferguson came into existence in 1953, and many thought that a larger new Ferguson tractor would come on stream, but nothing came of this. He continued with Massey Ferguson until July 1954, when he resigned as chairman, being by nature not suited to partnership. In Britain after the war, his business connection with the Standard Motor Company, thanks to his badgering of top government people, including Sir Stafford Cripps, where he was able to convince them that more steel should be made available, meant that by 1956, over 500,000 Ferguson tractors had been built at Coventry. The complete Ferguson system was seen as being able to tackle most jobs on the farm, from cultivation to mixing meal and making holes for fencing posts. Harry demonstrated the versatile qualities of his tractor one time by driving a demonstration model onto the ballroom of Claridge's Hotel in London, and then down a flight of stairs. I'd have loved to have seen that. Around about this time in the middle 50s, he turned to motor car design and away from agriculture, his intention being to transform the family car. In the early 1950s, Harry turned down an offer of a knighthood from Winston Churchill, who he had got to know quite well and who admired his work. Apparently, Harry felt industrialists should not be included in the civic honours system. Given his strong unionist sympathies, I feel this non-acceptance of an honour by him to be quite remarkable. Harry postulated economic ideas to his political friends on keeping inflation down, but these were not really followed through or taken up. He was always a person ahead of his time and took up the ideas of Freddie Dixon on four-wheel drive in cars. Harry Ferguson Research Limited was set up and became heavily involved in the project. Harry envisaged the four-wheel drive system as a great revolution in motor car design, a light, safe system. He tried to apply the same approach as for tractors. That is, he would finance the development cost and somebody else would manufacture the car, but no one would take him up. Harry Ferguson Research did produce the P99 racing car project, assisted by Tony Ralt, who did most of the development driving. It had his first win in the Alton Park Gold Cup with Sterling Moss driving in 1962, but by this time Harry was dead. The Ferguson formula was also used in the production of a luxury car, the Jensen FF, but ironically this was not for the popular market or the people's car he had hoped for. Back in 1948, Harry and Maureen had purchased Abbott's Wood, a country mansion near Stow-on-the-Wold, Gloucestershire, and near to Coventry. It was a very grand house and estate, and they lavished care and attention on it. Harry was happy here. He was, true to his perfectionist nature, very particular about the house and estate looking superb. On reflection, perhaps too particular. Certainly for my taste. For instance, he insisted that trees and lawns be kept completely immaculate. A workman was kept more or less permanently occupied, lifting leaves off the grass around the place, while certain trees had to be guyed to keep them straight. One farmer, who was allowed grazing rights for sheep, incurred Harry's displeasure by allowing too many tufts of wool to remain on the pasture land. An artificial lake had to be a full circle and not in any way out of shape. Harry rose at the same time every morning, and breakfast, dinner and other meals had to be served to the minute, so ordained. As he got older, he came back to Northern Ireland for quite long holidays, especially around Dundrum, and also the Conway Hotel at Dunmurry was a favourite place of his. It is said nothing pleased him better than to be driven around the lanes and roads of his youth in County Down. In these years, though, he became especially prone to psychosomatic illness and bouts of severe depression. In 1957 in Jamaica, on holiday, he had a very unpleasant experience, being shot in the leg by an intruder trying to rob Maureen and him at their holiday residence. From time to time he bounced back, though, in spirit, and his enthusiasm for life returned. He toyed with the idea of becoming involved again in the tractor design, but it was not to be. Harry died on the 25th of October 1960, being found dead in his bath. The coroner at the subsequent inquest returned an open verdict, Harry having died after an overdose of barbiturate tablets. About a year or so earlier, he had been found unconscious in a similar fashion in his bath. His wife Maureen, it is said, never really picked up from Harry's death, but survived him by 5 years. In accordance with his wishes, his body was cremated and his ashes scattered from an aircraft over his beloved Abbott's Wood. The couple were survived by their only child, a daughter. Very recently, Walter, a group of people, including Bill Forsyth and Roy Poots, in their efforts to erect a permanent memorial to Harry at the site of his birthplace, ran a very successful Harry Ferguson Homestead Day there. It attracted visitors from all over the British Isles and further afield. These people's efforts deserve success, for Harry Ferguson surely was a one-off. The Ulster Transport Museum have produced a lovely little booklet on him, written by Bill Martin. They also have some of the early artefacts of Harry's career, a rebuilt monoplane and a Fergie tractor. The world, I feel, owes a lot to Harry Ferguson and to his pioneering spirit in the field of agriculture, thus directly taking much of the drudgery worldwide out of farming life in the 20th century and increasing food production in the process. That he was quirky, some would even class him a crank, is I feel neither here nor there at the end of the day. He was in many ways a benefactor to mankind, and one who would, I'm sure, not have complained at being described as a great Ulsterman, for that he undoubtedly was.
Jim O'Hagan with the story of Harry Ferguson, remarkable man. And now here's a delightful new version of a famous song. This is Where Have All the Flowers Gone by Tommy Sands.
Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? The young girls pick them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? Gone to husbands, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
And where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? Gone to soldier, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? Gone to graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
And where have all the graveyards gone? Long time passing. Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time ago. Where have all the graveyards gone? Gone to flowers, everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn?
That's the new version of Where Have All the Flowers Gone by Tommy Sands with many